Hello, dear viewers. Welcome back. You should be able to see us this time. You're watching the Bruno and Linzio transmission. Linzio, how are you today?
Ciao di nuovo, caro Bruno, a Milano. Sto bene, grazie, but I have to say, I'm incredulous. And I was talking to our dear friend, Madame Olivia, yesterday, and we both said, we are so tired of being incredulous. What are we incredulous about? There's so much madness. Incomprehensible, unbelievable, incredible. And in the week since we last spoke, there's been so much. And we'll get to it, I guess. But could I begin, since we didn't have visuals last time? I think one of the things we did lost a bit of its impact. So I'd just like to repeat this exercise. What is that?
What a beautiful book by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels.
Can you see the state of it? It's really old. I've had this a very long time.
That's the only old thing in my screen right now.
And the quote I took from it last time, this was to illustrate the origins of globalism. The communists are further reproached with desiring to abolish countries and nationality. Of whom does that remind you, caro Bruno? The communists are further reproached with desiring to abolish countries and nationality. The working men have no country. National differences and antagonisms between peoples are daily more and more vanishing, owing to the development of the bourgeoisie, to freedom of commerce, to the world market, to uniformity in the mode of production, and in the conditions of life corresponding thereto. The supremacy of the proletariat will cause them to vanish still faster. Vanish, 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 damn borders and countries and national boundaries and differences between people. Vanish, out damn spot. So there they were, the proto-globalists, Carl and Fred, and you won.
Yes.
So I wanted to get that in, and I wanted to also get in something that you and I agreed we should read every week. I'll do it this week and you can do it next week. We've got to rub their noses in it, the globalists, the Objectivists, who are at it again on YouTube, and we'll get to that too, I don't doubt. But remember this from Leonard Peikoff in 2013, when there was the Gang of Eight immigration bill up for consideration. I am against the immigration bill 100%, not just one clause or another, for one very simple reason. It happens to be the case that we are teetering on the edge of dictatorship. It happens to be the case that if the Democrats continue to have or grow their political power, we will be over that edge, i.e. into dictatorship. And it happens to be the case, whether you like it or not, that of all Hispanics in America, whether they're rich or poor, self-made men or anything else, 80% are reliably and continually democratic. So if you were talking about a bill, I don't care whether it's fair, unfair, in any other respects, you're talking about a bill that will infuse into this country a massive amount of democratic supporters and thereby guarantee the destruction of this country. That is what immigration means today, and there's no use asking me in theory, what do I think? There is no theory now, we're at the end, so it's a question of buying time. Brief outbreak of sanity and rationality.
I think there's a perfect continuation to that. I'm going to read from this book. Do you see this?
Yes, I do. Hans Hermann Hoppe.
Yes, this is brand new. This just came out a few months ago.
Getting libertarianism right.
Yes. With the right having a double
yes,
meaning,
sure.
Of course.
Yes. 'Yes. 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 '
So Leonard Peikoff is saying that a crisis would occur if all these immigrants would just pour in. They would, of course, vote Democrat, and we know the crime. And I mean, don't some of them even want to reconquer the South, the Southwest, and remake the Mexican borders as they used to be? Isn't that part of the push? But anyhow, the tax-funded public welfare should be eliminated, of course, root and branch. But the inevitable crisis that a quote-unquote free immigration policy would bring about does not produce this result. To the contrary, crises, as everyone vaguely familiar with history would know, are typically used and often purposefully fabricated by states in order to further increase their own power. And surely this crisis produced by a free immigration policy would be an extraordinary one. What left libertarians, i.e. objectivists, typically ignore in their nonchalant or even sympathetic appraisal of the predictable crisis is the fact that the immigrants who caused the collapse are still physically present when it occurs. For left libertarians, owing to their egalitarian preconceptions, this fact does not imply a problem. For them, all people are more or less equal, and hence an increase in the number of immigrants has no more of an impact than an increase of the domestic population via a higher birth rate. For every social realist, however, indeed for everyone with any common sense, this premise is patently false and potentially dangerous. 1 million more Nigerians or Arabs living in Germany, or 1 million more Mexicans or Hutus or Tutsis residing in the U.S. is quite a different thing than 1 million more homegrown Germans or Americans. With millions of third and second world immigrants present when the crisis hits and the paychecks stop coming in, it is highly unlikely that a peaceful outcome will result and a natural private property-based social order emerge. And to conclude, rather, it is far more likely, and indeed almost certain, that civil war, looting, vandalism, and tribal or ethnic gang warfare will break out instead, and the call for a strongman state will become increasingly unmistakable.
I think that's a highly likely outcome to what's going on now. It wouldn't surprise me in the least. And it occurs to me that our side, the good guys, are not sufficiently alert to the fact that that might well be what it takes in the end. You know, we have people saying, well, what can we do? And you say, well, for goodness sake, don't you see that the abuses and usurpations that have gone on and are going on and will be much worse with all of the invasions from the south that are occurring? You're in a 1776 situation. That kind of solution might well be necessary. But the good guys are simply not ready for that. And I think if anything like that came close to coming to pass, as things stand, the generals would side with the bad guys. I think in the current circumstance, they'd overthrow Trump and install the Speaker of the House, who happens to be Nancy Pelosi. But it might not come to that. But it would be entirely unsurprising if it did. Now, let's just remind ourselves, what is the antidote to this? What he's saying there is that if you've got an invasion of alien cultures, unsympathetic to private property rights, to individual rights, freedom of association and speech, and so on, if you've got an invasion of aliens hostile to those things, well, then that becomes a question of culture. And I just remind you, while we're on the quotation bandwagon, Ayn Rand on nationalism. Nationalism, properly understood, as a man's devotion to his country because of an approval of its basic premises, principles, and social system, as well as its culture, is the common bond of that nation. It is a commonly understood culture and an affection for it that permits a society of men to live together peacefully. But what is the prerequisite? Is a common bond for that culture. Germans, French, Italians, no problem bringing them into America. Dinky little savages from shithole countries, there's a huge problem. And that's where they're coming from now. And that's what the Ayn Rand Institute is applauding. We're incredulous.
Yes, well, the Yawan book show, as you know, he always changes his position. So it goes from, oh, IQ tests are literally evil, the science itself is evil, until it's not the results that the science itself is evil, and and then he invites an objectivist psychology student, PhD or something.
Oh, I saw a bit of that,
and
but I couldn't take it because she's a. How can she possibly have a doctorate, let alone have anything sensible to say about anything? She's stupid.
Well, fortunately, as I understand, psychologists are supposed to listen and not speak, so she might be all right. But I have not listened to that. I'm talking about a year ago. He had her on, and she said, "Listen, Yawan, actually, IQ tests are quite, they're quite accurate," and so he decided, oh, okay, then I'll change my position. And Yawan just changes his position all the time. First, it's, oh, Muslims are a mosquito bite; they'll do nothing. It's no problem at all. And then all of a sudden, oh no, we have to stop Muslims coming into Europe because the Europeans are too racist, and so the Muslims can't integrate because of the bad Europeans. So he's still blaming Europeans, but at least he changes his position. So I don't even, how can you even attack dialectically someone who simply does not have a position? While on the other hand, we have the pure oblectivists, those who are advocating for the right to travel as an intrinsic individual right inherent in the nature of man, and that all governments must uphold. Well, that you can criticize, and that's what we've done.
I made a list after the conversation yesterday with Olivia about why we're incredulous, of the things that have happened just in the week since you and I last spoke. At that time, the smirk seen around the world had just occurred, and we didn't have much time to talk about it. But we were incredulous at that. That is to say, at the left's evil reaction to it and vilification of that courageous young lad who just simply stood his ground in the face of a dinky little savage who was beating a primitive instrument in his face. Shortly after that, we had that crazy situation with Roger Stone being arrested at 5 o'clock in the morning by 21 FBI agents armed to the teeth, and there were helicopters and amphibious units and machine guns and all the rest. Just absolute Stalinism, Stalinist thuggery in the land of the free. Over nothing. Over nothing. We had Comrade Kamala Harris announce her presidential bid, and in the process say that she proposes a complete nationalization of healthcare, banning private healthcare, banning private health insurance. We had one of those ugly Muslim women congresspersons applauding the regime in Venezuela. So there's your Islamo-Marxism, as I like to call it. And of course we had our dearly beloved comrade, Occasional Cortex, advocating a 70% tax rate and a Green New Deal that would ban oil and gas exploration, which, by the way, we have here. Our Occasional Cortex lookalike Prime Minister, who speaks in the same way, like the world's going to end in 12 years, in 12 years, the world will end. That's our Prime Minister, and that's Occasional Cortex. As I've said before, I think they're twin spawns of Satan. We had all of that going on. What does Yawan do? ARI left a minute and a half out of an interview and put it up in its own right on YouTube, attacking Trump. And I was not only incredulous, I was apoplectic. And you might have seen the comment that I put up on YouTube, to which no one has replied. And to my surprise, they've left it up for a couple of days. No one has replied to it, but 5 people have liked it. I suspect I might be looking at one of them.
Oh. What would give you that idea? I like the comment, and this interview snippet he uploaded is from another e-celeb. I don't exactly recall where I saw this person, but I definitely saw that interviewer somewhere.
Is that who they're coming for, or me?
Oh, sorry, that's someone over here. Here in the civilized countries, there's the public hospitals, so we have to hear that noise every now and then. Anyway, this is another e-celeb. In other words, Yawan is forking out the cash once more in order to get visibility. Nobody cares about Yawan, and maybe I shouldn't give him advice, but step back from that camera. Why is he so close up to that camera? Nobody wants to see that. Nobody.
I wish someone would break that to him, however gently or forcibly it needs to be broken to him. It's not pretty. It's not pretty, and it doesn't sound pretty either. I mean, honestly, what do they think they're doing? But shall we go through what he said?
Please indulge us.
It began with, would Ayn Rand be wearing a Donald Trump cap when she went to bed? And he said no, she'd go to sleep in shock and horror. That is to say, shock and horror at Donald Trump. I think she would hate him. How the hell does he know that? I don't want to speak for Ayn Rand. Well, you just did, because she was a genius. I can say what I think, not what I think Ayn Rand would think. She would hate him. So he doubles down. She would hate him. And she would say, yes, I'm for making America great again, and it would be great if Donald Trump had a clue what America was. And then the crowd of sycophants applauded him at that point. Because to make something great, you have to know what it is first. And America is not about steel jobs. Oh, we can't be doing the steel jobs. Or this job, or this thing, or trying to tell Harley Davidson where they should open a plant. America is about individual rights. America is about freedom. America is the only moral country in history because it's founded on the principle of individual rights. This is a president who doesn't know what individual rights are. This is a president who has no conception of the Constitution, never mentions the Constitution, because he doesn't really care. He just wants to do what he wants to do. The interviewer, somewhat incredulous at this point, says, do you really think he doesn't care? Yaron says, I'm convinced he cares zero. Have you met him? No. How do you know that? By watching him and seeing his behavior. And they end the clip at that point. It's very clear to me that Yaron doesn't watch him because Trump mentions the Constitution in just about every speech that he gives, not to mention his impromptu and non-impromptu press conferences. He's talking about the Constitution all the time. I dare say it's true that Trump's concept of individual rights is not the objectivist one. But then again, neither was the Founding Fathers. and neither is Yaron Brooks, because as we've discussed, he endorses the Founding Fathers' intrinsicist view of rights. So are we to hold that against Donald Trump? Of course he believes in individual liberty, and again, he does mention it often. So I'm not entirely sure that Yaron is talking about the same man. But of course, what's really behind it is Trump's advocacy of border security and the wall in particular. That's what they hate. And I come back to the Koch brothers and the George Soros agenda. That's what's driving them. If Trump dropped the wall, suddenly he'd probably be a good guy. Look at all the deregulation he's done, lowering of taxes, getting out of the Iran deal, pulling out of the Paris Accord. I mean, the president who does those things, when you've got people wanting to ban oil and gas altogether and 70% tax rates and nationalised healthcare, that man is John Galt by comparison. You know, we often say, well, of course, Trump's not a John Galt, but it's unrealistic to expect such a thing.
He's pretty close as far as I'm concerned.
Especially when you compare him to these lefties who are absolutely rampant at the moment. And now, the latest thing they're doing is saying it's perfectly okay to kill a newborn infant, not just to abort a day before it's due or 5 minutes before it's due, but if it makes its way out of there, to kill it after a discussion, of course, during which you make it comfortable. I mean, this is just brazen evil, and ARI are a part of it.
Oh, it's disgusting. That whole abortion thing is just sickening. Really just amazes me how people will cheer this kind of disgusting. I mean, this is just...
And they did literally cheer it.
Evil. It's evil. Yeah,
the New York legislature, when it was passed and the gavel had banged down, woo-hoo, woo-hoo. I mean, there, gathered in that room, are the people I call subhuman. And in the context of what they were applauding and cheering and whooping and hollering for, I have no hesitation in calling them that. That evil doesn't begin to describe it. And it's everywhere. It's rampant. It is the drooling beast prowling through mankind, as Stephen Mallory puts it. And honestly, I've had this discussion with some people and say it's hard to resist the notion that there isn't a separate agent of evil that is impressing itself upon us. Because it's hard to believe that the people who appear to be human could embrace something so evil as killing an infant just after it's emerged from the womb when it wasn't supposed to. Infants.
Oh, yeah. I think it's a very attractive position that there is an evil force moving all of this because I don't think unthinking or irrationality quite gets to it, because obviously most of these people don't even know what the hell they're doing. I mean, they don't even realize what they're doing. They're just NPCs.
What does that mean again? I've forgotten.
Drones, bot. It means non-playable characters, but essentially it means a robot, a pre-programmed robot. It has pre-programmed, it's not really a human being, it's just responding to stimuli. So that it's the time to applaud, so let's applaud. That's an NPC. And But clearly, I mean, I don't know. I was thinking about this, about the fact that if this kind of law would ever pass in Switzerland, and my answer was a clear no, and this would never pass in Switzerland. And what's funny to me is about this debate on abortion is that the USA actually has much more lax laws on abortion than European countries. I mean, European countries are supposedly, socialist, blah blah blah. It's up to the first trimester. I mean, after that, it's recognized that you're dealing with a fetus rather than an embryo. So the line is, okay, well, an embryo will let that slide, but if it's already developed into a fetus, that's it. That's too far for us. But but in the States, it's, I mean, at the what, 8-month abortion? I mean, this is completely insane. I mean, you could literally do a cesarean and remove the child at that point, and it would survive. So how could you possibly believe that it's justified to kill this fetus that could survive outside of the womb? I mean, this is clearly murder, and I mean, anyone who this idea that, oh, it's the woman's body, so it's not murder. But I mean, what are they thinking? I mean, this is not thinking. This is some kind of joyful, gleeful, or malevolent enjoyment.
Yes, that's a very good term. Joyful and gleeful embrace of evil. Now, there was a feminazi on with Tucker Carlson yesterday who was defending the New York legislation, but she never directly answered the question that Tucker asked repeatedly was, how can you justify killing an infant? And she just recited like a mantra, robot-like, just as you're saying, but she was enjoying the way she was putting him down. And she would just say, I refuse to let you and any other man interfere with my body. Even though in this case we're clearly talking about a body that's already, the umbilical cord has been cut. It's separate. It's there on the table being kept comfortable while a discussion is going on as to whether to kill it. But just looking at that creature, the feminazi, and that smug, gleeful, brazen embrace of evil, yeah, I know you think, is that in the grip of some other force, which is, of course, to let them off the hook, and I don't think we should let them off the hook. Ayn Rand certainly wouldn't let them off the hook, and she would ridicule the notion that we're contemplating that there's some separate evil force. But clearly she was not unaware of the notion because she ascribed it so eloquently to Stephen Mallory. And I'm afraid I've always been a bit of a Stephen Mallory. and that drooling beast, it's very hard not to think there is such a thing. Of course, if there is such a thing, it might have its counterpart.
Yes, we can. Yes.
And then there
Well,
are all sorts of trouble. Oh God, so to speak.
Yes, well, that's the good news, so to speak. If there is the evil counterpart, there must be the good counterpart. So we can hope that he'll, he'll accept our weaknesses and embrace us once we're gone from this earth.
And just think, you'll be able to go to that beautiful cathedral with impunity.
Yes.
And
oh yes, I've just been to a cathedral which is in Bergamo. That is another city in Lombardy. And it was breathtaking. I tell you, it's one of those times where you're in this position where you just don't know what to say. It's just incredible, and to all this this idea that the Middle Ages is just so backward, and oh, Christians and terrible, terrible, terrible. No, no, that would be so. It's just so stupid. It would be the same thing as saying, oh, those Greeks and Romans, they were such irrational. Oh, because they believed in Zeus. Oh, that's just horrible, horrible. And you just walk into one of these European churches and you just remain in awe at the beauty that man is able to create.
And that has been inspired by his worship of a supreme being. Now we're going to be denounced as mystics and irrational and probably evil as well. I have one last quote that I thought was pertinent to everything we've been talking about. May I cite it now?
Please.
A nation can survive its fools, but it cannot survive treason from within. An enemy at the gates is less formidable, for he is known and carries his banner openly, but the traitor moves amongst those within the gate freely. His sly whispers rustling through all the alleys, heard in the very halls of government itself, for the traitor appears not a traitor. He speaks in accents familiar to his victims, and he wears their face and their arguments. He appeals to the baseness that lies deep in the hearts of all men. He rots the soul of a nation. He works secretly and unknown in the night to undermine the pillars of the city. He infects the body politic so that it can no longer resist. A murderer is less to fear. The traitor is the plague. That is Cicero. And I shall make no comment as to of whom I might have been thinking when I read it.
Yes, well, the only different thing is that the accent is not familiar in this case of the traitor. With an accent familiar. Fortunately, there is an accent distinction in this case.
No, but the language is supposedly ours, reason and freedom and so on. We're hearing the same language, but I thought it was very apposite.
No, I was just trying to make a joke. I jest. It's incredibly apropos, and of course Cicero is one of the greatest writers in our Western civilization.
Oh no, not Western civilization. Are you some kind of white supremacist?
Yeah. Yes. Well, thank you, Lencio, and may we end with our tre, due,
uno,
moga.
Make Objectivism great again.